Whenever we talk about research methods, we need to talk about 3 or 4 very important concepts with them. First thing that I think everybody knows about is what we call the hypothesis. The hypothesis, I think everybody from kindergarten knows, it's an educated guess. That's what you've always learned. I would only add that it's an educated guess about the relationship between two things. And that's what we're going to examine here in just a second. Now, a couple things about the hypothesis that I want you to know. It is always in the form of a formal statement. So you're basically making a prediction, and then the goal of an experiment is to either try to prove or disprove the hypothesis. So whatever that is, you're trying to prove it or disprove it. If you disprove the hypothesis, you're just as successful as if you would have proven it. Let's take a look at 4 hypotheses. That's the plural. Okay. For example, older people enjoy life more than younger people. That's one example of a hypothesis. Okay, it's a prediction that you would then test to try and either prove or disprove. Second hypothesis. A coffee break during the morning and afternoon will increase productivity. We'll come back to these here in a minute. Third, a decrease in the availability of alcohol will result in a decrease in auto accidents. And fourth, practicing good study habits will bring about an improvement in grades. Now, I told you that we had to talk about some basic concepts. The first thing, you have to know what a hypothesis is. But then secondly, when you see a hypothesis or you talk about one, when you talk about research, there's always 2 things that we end up talking about. One is called the independent variable. The second is the dependent variable. Those are 2 very important concepts we're going to look at. Let's talk about the independent variable. The independent variable, in plain English, is the concept that you're looking at. It's what you're actually researching, what you're doing with the project. Let's say that we have an experiment to see if a new drug treats cancer in a certain way, if it improves the quality of life for cancer patients. Well, what are you studying? You're studying the drug. That's what you're looking at. You're seeing if the drug has an impact on something else. So the independent variable, you can think of it almost as like a cause and effect type deal. The independent variable is the cause. That's what you're researching. Okay? So that's the independent variable. The dependent variable is the concept or I guess the variable that represents something that may or may not be influenced by the independent variable. Okay, so for example, in my example a second ago, the talking about cancer and the drug. Well, the independent variable, okay, would be the drug. The dependent variable, you're seeing if it has an influence on the treatment of cancer. Okay, so the treatment of cancer, or the effect that it has on cancer, that would be your dependent variable. Now, people get these messed up all the time. I'm going to tell you kind of the secret to success here. If you can remember one statement and then fill in the blanks, you're in great shape. Okay? Remember this statement. We are studying the effect of blank upon blank. And then all we're going to do is fill in the 2 blanks. Okay, we are studying the effect of blank upon blank. When we try and figure out independent and dependent variables, okay, let's go back and look at our different hypotheses. First one, older people enjoy life more than younger people. Well, let's fill in the blank. We are studying the effect of blank upon blank. If you look at that, older people enjoy life more than younger people. What's the main concept that you're looking at? What's the main thing? Age. So that's what you're looking at, to see if age has an impact upon enjoyment of life. So we would fill in the blanks. We'd say we are studying the effect of age upon enjoyment of life. Now, when we fill in those two blanks, the first blank is your independent variable. The second blank is your dependent. So, for example, age would be your independent variable. Enjoyment of life is your dependent variable. Next example. A coffee break during the morning and afternoon will increase productivity. Okay, let's use our statement. We are studying the effect of a coffee break upon productivity. So there again, you have your independent and your dependent variables. Third, a decrease in the availability of alcohol will result in a decrease in auto accidents. Okay, again, substitute. We are studying the effect of the availability of alcohol, so that's your independent variable, upon auto accidents. That would be your dependent variable. And last one, practicing good study habits will bring about an improvement in grades. We are studying the effect of good study habits upon grades. That would be your independent and dependent variables. Those are always tough, and a lot of students struggle with them, but that kind of what I call the magic statement, that will definitely help you a lot, or at least I believe so. Now, the third concept that we're going to look at here is what we call the operational definition. An operational definition is basically a way of trying to define a concept in so that in common terms, so that we can study it easily in research. For example, okay, the word love. What does the word love mean? Well, it means a whole lot of things to different people. There's no way that you can come up with a perfect definition of love. And so, obviously in psychology, this is something that we would love to study, the concept of love and humans that, whether one person loves another or so forth. So how do you study it if you can't explain what it is? So we have to come up with some way that we could measure love. And so literally we're going to come up with something like a test. For example, we might have a list of 10 or 15 things that people might do that we could observe if they're in love. So they might hold hands. They might walk each other to class. They might sneak a kiss in the midst of school. Okay? They might do these kinds of things that we could observe, and then we could literally watch them. Okay, using observation over a period of a couple weeks, and if we witness the person doing 8 of these 10 things, then we could operationally define them to be in love. Now, that doesn't guarantee that they actually are, okay, because it's not a perfect definition, but it's something that we could use for research. Now, it might be a whole lot easier if we simply put Johnny and Sally in 2 different rooms, give them a survey, and on Sally's survey we say, do you love Johnny? And on Johnny's survey we say, do you love Sally? And if they both say yes, then we're going to operationally define them to be in love. That might be an easier way and so forth. But the main thing, we have to figure out some way that we can define each one of these concepts. So let's go back here real quick and look at our hypotheses one last time. And I'm not going to try and come up with definitions for each one, but let's talk about what would have to be operationally defined. Older people enjoy life more than younger people. What do we mean by older people? That's something that would have to be operationally defined. Are we talking about anybody over 21? Or are we talking about people 50 and above? or what? I mean, we would have to define that so that we would know who we were actually looking at in the research. By the same token, younger people. What do we mean? Enjoyment of life. What do we mean by that? How are we going to define enjoyment of life? So there we might have to come up again with some kind of a test or some kind of a way to measure their enjoyment of life. And those are called operational definitions. Okay? Coffee break during the morning and afternoon will increase productivity. Coffee break, what do we mean? Okay, do you have to drink coffee for it to be considered a coffee break? Or can you drink Mountain Dew? Or could you just take 15 minutes and just kind of take a little power nap? Okay, we would have to define it. And then, of course, productivity. What do we mean? How are we going to judge productivity? A decrease in the availability of alcohol will result in a decrease in auto accidents. Again, I think you can probably figure out, what do we mean by availability of alcohol? Are we going to have to go to some county in Kentucky where they don't allow any alcohol sales? Or, what do we mean by that? And then auto accidents. If I just barely bump into your car, but there's no damage to either vehicle, and we just laugh and go on, is that considered an auto accident? Or does it have to be something that we get the insurance involved or something of that nature? Okay, last one, practicing good study habits will bring about an improvement in grades. What do we mean by good study habits? And then grades, we could probably verify by either looking at like quarter grades or maybe semester grades, but that would be a relatively easy one to kind of identify. Okay, so just in summary, again, the basic 4 concepts that we looked at here, we talked about a hypothesis. It's a formal statement, and it predicts 2 things. Okay, basically, we said that a hypothesis is an educated guess about the relationship between 2 things. And what we'll now put in is those 2 things are the independent and dependent variable. So a hypothesis predicts the relationship between an independent and dependent variable. The independent variable, the dependent variable, and then the operational definition. Those are all things that you have to know to understand research.